Alright, what up?
When tank players hit tank.
Here's a VOD review. Let's check it out.
The government here.
I've already watched this through once, so I kind of know what to expect. But I haven't had direct criticisms. I mean, first things first, I guess this is a pug, so you're playing force comps, which is why you're allowed to play Ana. But usually in ladder, especially around Masters, that's when you're going to want to stop playing the Ana and gravitate more towards the Moira. But obviously this is a pug, so it's a little bit different circumstances.
We're gonna try to survive, and Ludovic is gonna get the big.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a big pick. Watch it.
Yeah, so we're just getting off here. Oh, wait. I don't remember you starting off on the Moira, but... Oh yeah, it was just for first fight. I remember now. So obviously you guys were stuck in a little bit of a sticky scenario there. And then you're like, okay, let me just swap to the Ana real quick. So that didn't last very long. But yeah, that was just kind of, your Ryan went too far in, and then you went too far in and tried to heal him, and then, you know, a whole bunch of stuff collapsed from there. But yeah, now that we're just watching here. Alright, good.
Ryan can die.
You're just playing pretty passively, just healing your tanks. It's pretty good.
Mercury on tank. Low.
You're sleeping on the statue.
Nice.
Get back in the fight.
Easy. Die.
Heal up.
Alright, that's an okay nade just to make sure your tanks don't get eliminated too early.
I'm on fire. Keep out of my way.
Yeah, you didn't have to talk very much because it was just kind of, you guys just kind of walked up to the point and the enemy team just kind of fell over. That happens sometimes.
You're covered.
Just wanted to make sure.
And then your Reaper got out of there, very good.
No one can hide from my sight.
I will keep you here. You're powered up. Get in there.
Alright, so this is kind of the first mistake that I saw here. It's really important that as a support player you get value out of your ultimates. I mean, obviously here it didn't make that much of a difference, but you guys really overinvested, and that's just kind of the classic with Masters players, is you guys don't really conserve your ultimates, and you don't really think about like the long term. You're just like, okay, how do I win this fight? But you need to think about that fight and the fight after. So what happens here is, because you guys overinvested into that previous fight, the enemy team just gets to walk on and use their ultimates as well, and puts you in a sticky scenario. That's an okay nade, but obviously I would have preferred you waited for more value.
No bubbles.
Yeah, and here you just didn't have any ults because of that last fight. Also, in that scenario, I want you to probably call out to your team that you're going to use your sleep. I'm not expecting you to have to like take over the comms completely, but just letting your team know that you're going to sleep somebody is going to help you get more value out of it most of the time.
Watching your back.
I'm always a widow on the flank.
Widow's on the mega.
Alright, obviously there wasn't a lot you could do in that scenario unless you hit the instant flick sleep. But yeah, and then by the time that you realize that you could have gone for it, he got bubbled. So, you know, maybe try to play a little bit more heads up as a support, even when you think you're just walking to the objective. You might be caught off guard by stuff like that. So if you're playing heads up and thinking that there might be a Rhino, you might have hit that sleep. Alright, that's a good nade to keep your Rhino up. So there's two different options when they pop a nano in that little choke. Personally, as a Rhine player myself, I would say that you just pack away and let them get 0 value out of Nano. But you can just kind of try to fight it out and overwhelm them.
Please help me.
Okay. Something major here that I didn't like very much was... Alright. Just refamiliarizing myself with this. Is when you're stuck in scenarios like this, where you see that Widow, right? That's when you need to immediately get out of LOS. Like, when you hit that corner, that's where you need to be playing off of. But instead, you went super wide right, and you're expecting your team to perform miracles to save you, rather than you just kind of feeding. Or like you're kind of feeding and hoping that somehow a monkey that you don't have on a team because you're playing Ryan Zarya and your tanks are already around the corner are going to somehow come back and save you, right? But you need to realize that that's not going to happen, and you just need to be like, okay, I'm low. There's a Widow staring at me. I just need to chill out, wait for my next nade, get to a decent amount of health, preferably above 120, so you don't insta die to a body shot. And then you can try to peek that corner again, or your Reinhardt can get up there and try to force him away. Same thing with your Reaper, but just trying to take those fights immediately is always going to end in your death and might lose you fights. So in that situation, stay over here. Don't come over here. This is bad. This is bad zone. You want to be out of LOS. Maybe you could even grab that mini, but just rushing into the no man's land out here will always get you killed, especially if you want to climb a GM.
Please help me.
Kill him.
I contact
I'm
Fiona.
not ready to hang it up.
Luckily, the other team wasn't able to get back here in time for recontest, and your Lucio was able to heal your teammates. So it actually did not end up being that big of a deal, but it could have. Like, there's very many situations where you guys just don't get that done.
Take your medicine.
Shock was getting outplayed.
Ah!
You're going to be okay.
Alright, something in these, like, on these mid-fights that I would think, or, like, as a support you should be thinking about is kind of the ults you're expecting from the enemy team. Typically when I'm playing support, I press tab a lot. I haven't really seen you do that a lot here, but especially in your attacks, it's very important that you kind of think about what the defense is going to come up with. Because if you can think about, like, okay, their Rhine has Shatter, their Reaper has Death Blossom, they have Grab, they have Sound Barrier, right? And you can kind of make a plan in your head. You don't necessarily have to calm to your team, right? That's not always necessary. Just to, like, like, you don't have to take over the comms and yell at your team like, yo, we have to do this, this, and this, right? That's unrealistic to expect that from every player. So what I'm expecting just in your head is to think about what the enemy team has coming up and how you yourself as Iana don't die to it. If your team dies to it, fine, right? They're going to die, right? That's just something that's going to happen. But if you can prevent yourself from dying in those situations, it's possible your team might dodge them, and you can just win that fight just by being the better player. Obviously, you don't really talk that much, so I can't really tell what's going through your head. But it's tough. Additionally, you need to be very careful, especially in King's Row 3rd, about those high grounds, because you know they have a Widow, right? And you know that he's coming from spawn because your Widow won the duel previously. So you need to be like, okay, so I know there's 2 places where I can get shot right now, even though it looks pretty safe because their tanks are back here. My Ryan's right here, and I'm just going to keep LOS down this area. But you know that their Widow could get over here. She could be standing down main behind the Rhine all the way over there. Or she could peek that window directly above you over here out of LOS, right? And if you're just standing directly in the middle right here, that's where you're going to get shot. So typically as an Ana, I would want you to try to rotate over here to the right side, because that's going to be your best point of, like, your best POV, where you can still shoot your Ryan as he takes this corner right here, right? You can keep him healed. Even if he pushes up, you use that little doorway. But at the same time, you're not able to be seen from a Widow that's sitting up here, perhaps. And those little micro positionings is going to be like life or death, basically, for as a support. And you need to be thinking about those regularly.
Widow top left. Still there. Another one.
Yeah, look how easy that shot was for him. You just marching down Main Street, and your team just got rolled over directly as a result of that.
Wait, Luzuki, was it you who like flanked from behind?
I have your back.
Yeah.
Or
Dude, you can always find me in their backline. Trust me.
dude, I thought it was Tracer. What the fuck?
Go. I'll keep you here.
Alright. So right here, there's a bunch of stuff going on, right? Ult's flying every which way, and you're just focusing on keeping your team healed. Luckily, you don't get shot by the Widow right there, but you definitely could have. But other than that, you did okay. Again, I would have liked you to have communicated to your team when you were going to use your nano.
What the fuck?
And right there, there's another thing that you should be keeping your heads up for.
No!
Right? Say if you slept that ball coming in before he even got to your Ryan and the people after, then you could have just won that OT fight. Instead, you guys were just stuck. I know this is a lot of information I'm dumping, right? But this is the kind of thing that you have to be thinking about as a support, because it's not about just hitting your shots, right? You're not a DPS. It's about the macro and understanding what you can do with the cooldowns you have, being sleep and the nade, right? How you can get maximum value out of that to just destroy your team, right? And this is a situation where if you're the Ana and you're playing more heads up and you get the sleep on that ball, you basically carry your team to get that third point. Obviously, at the end of the game, it didn't matter, but if you wanna climb, right, and if you want to get above 3,800, get into GM, you need to. These are the situations that you need to be taking advantage of. Right. And now there's a Zarya behind, and they use personal, and you're just kind of in a bad spot.
Albana, help your Ana, help your Ana.
Yeah, and something I really don't like is when Anas say help your Ana, help your Ana, help your Ana. That's really not helpful to anybody, right? There's, especially after you just watch your tanks nosedive off the edge. There's really you're already dead as an Ana, and trying to just yelling at your team to help you out is really helping nobody. So I just like you to just like shut up, or like say like, yo, I'm getting shit on. Right, but demanding assistance isn't helpful most of the time.
Go. I'll keep you here.
Tracer underneath Mega. She's still there. She has pulse bomb.
Grab. This is low.
Okay, that's unfortunate. Your tanks are antied. Your Ryan's dead. You slept the ball, but at the end of the day, you probably should have just saved your sleep for a situation like that. Obviously, if the ball committed to chasing you harder, then you should have slept him. But had you just saved it and he went for your Zarya and then the Tracer came for you, you probably would have lived. Obviously, it wouldn't have changed the result of this fight because they had ults and all that stuff. But those little, those little micro plays and how you're using your sleep darts over a game is going to change how you play, and game after game you're gonna have more situations where you could have won those fights and won those maps, gotten those points, stuff like that. Going into the defense here, you guys kind of rolled over them for a while. You stayed alive for a good amount of time.
Oh shit, I have scrims in half an hour.
So there's not a lot I can say. I'll just speed this up for now.
Sorry, I'm seeing.
What? Got it.
Oh shit,
hide back here.
She's okay.
Oh no.
Oh, that's not coming.
They know.
I think they know.
They know. Fuck. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, so your Ryan's dead. He's a feeder. You know, that's just kind of how it be sometimes. You got the trade, that's good. You missed the nade, but you're able to pocket him through it, which is alright.
Hanzo's one in the back. Oh, I don't have a password. Someone get in front of me.
What the
You're
fuck?
going to live.
Reloading.
Something I do like to hear from an Ana is I like the reload call, but what I would personally do is try to call out that when you're reloading about like 5 seconds earlier than you're actually going to do it, because it preps your team to play more defensively rather than you saying, oh, I'm reloading, and you didn't warn them ahead of time, so they're kind of stuck in a bad position and they die directly as you're reloading. So if you try to call that out earlier, your team will probably react more and play like around a corner rather than just staring into the face of death.
Alright, you're throwing.
Go. I'll keep you healed. You're powered up. Get in there.
Alright. Right. That's a pretty good nano, but again, I just want you to... you probably just want to give your Ryan a heads up, because... like you'd be like, yo, Ryan, I'm gonna nano you, right? And then he's gonna play more aggressively, knowing that he's gonna have that damage resistance and the increased damage, rather than him just having to react to the fact that you pressed Q on him. In general, plans are way better than just making decisions in the moment. Especially in Overwatch, plans are always better.
They grab Dragon, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be okay.
And here's they just pop their Qs, but that's fine, right? Like then your team presses Q as on it. This doesn't really affect you as long as you have a good position here in the back. The snipers have really not threatened you at all. Like I haven't even seen their Hanzo or their Widow because they just stay all the way back.
I reflected the Sonic. We get a Sonic there on the show.
So you just kind of chill in while the enemy team feeds, which, you know, that's kind of... Sometimes games are like that. Once again, you have nano, right? And you want to communicate how you want to use it.
You're covered.
Widow top left.
Okay, let's it.
I'm gonna take the Widow.
You're powered up. Get in there.
Yeah, then it goes in with the nano blade, and
Top left.
that's another fight win.
You literally boop point.
Your Ryan probably dies over here, yeah. Nothing you can do about that. Your Ryan's just a little bit silly. But, again, that's not really a problem. Right, every fight's winnable. It doesn't matter how many people you have.
Lucio's above us, top right window.
It's almost a good sleep. And then your Genji feeds. Not anything you can do about that. Here you could go for a sleep perhaps, but other than that you're just kind of chilling out, holding mass 1. I'm not sure if you've realized how low you are at this point or you don't really care. But I would have naded myself because you've been standing back here at 70 for about 15 seconds. So if you just naded yourself at the beginning, you would have been had a lot more health and you wouldn't have died to that right click. Obviously it didn't matter that much, but you were 90 to a nano. You could have nanoed your Genji. He dashes through 5 people nanoed. He would get to like 80. He gets like 2 right clicks. That's a blade, and maybe you and the Genji can clutch that out if you had just made that if you had figured out that you were low and your Lucio was in their backline.
They have Lucio to get with. They're gonna when you're done. Oh, okay. I'm gonna be back in like 10 seconds.
Bro, but you know better to like, yo. You know it.
Yeah, I know it.
But you did it anyway.
Watching your
That's
back.
because you wanted to flex.
No. Like, Widow back right. I'm back.
It's just a
Sorry,
scratch.
behind.
You'll be fine.
Your Ryan feeds. Like I said, that's okay. You traded for the grav. And you have nano. You kind of waste your sleep. Let's see if you're gonna need that again at some point in this fight.
Here.
Grab. I'm gonna grab the point.
Go.
Terrible grab.
Obviously, comms are kind of quiet. You guys kind of waste ults, but you know that's how Masters is, right? Sometimes making sure, like double checking, make sure you guys have a solid plan for what ults you want to use may be the game changer.
Yeah, you know.
And Talon just dicked on Gladiator's Legion. Spoilers for
Yeah, but the big
Gauntlet.
guy can put that into the Mount
Oh, no. Lucio down back left.
No.
That ball's flying away. You don't really care. Miss your sleep. So what's happening here is the fight has started, and you've kind of gotten stressed out a little bit, and I can see it in your mass movements. Right, you're moving more erratically, and that makes it really hard to hit sleeps. So if you just kind of kept your cool, you probably sleep that hog. And again, you kind of miss the corner because you're not focusing because the fight's going on, right? So if you just kind of keep a temperament, you're going to be hitting these cooldowns a lot better during mid fights. And somehow you hit the Ana. I don't know how that happened, but you know, whatever. Sometimes that happens. It's a good pick on the Lucio. You got buff supports this fight, and you get that nano out, and that's probably just a GG. Obviously, I think at the end of the day, your team was far superior to theirs. I would like to see a more even VOD, perhaps, because it's going to make it easier for you to understand, like how these micro plays are going to cause you issues over the long run.
Don't shoot to Lucio.
But yeah, this was an okay map. Obviously, there's some stuff that you could definitely work on off of this. Go ahead and just reach out to me via DMs on Reddit or Discord or whatever if you want me to take a look. I'm pretty much always online, so just go ahead and hit me up. But yeah, at the end of the day, just like a couple different things. I would like you to give a larger heads up when you're reloading. Try to give your team a heads up when you're going to nano, and focus more during, or try to stay focused more during fights, so you have that less erratic aim, as well as keeping like your head, like playing heads up in between fights as well. Don't not just zoning out and just holding W and then getting headshot. But yeah, outside of that, good stuff. I can understand how you're high masters, and I can see the line that you need to cross to get in a GM. But yeah, just hit me up with any more questions. That's it.